Yeah, and one of the challenges with AI has always been around how much you can trust it, right? And we're definitely running through into that problem right now with LLMs, which are extremely confident but not necessarily fact based in the outputs that they are putting out. And in that regard, it was interesting that Congress actually took a stand, the United States Congress, for any global watchers, and U.S. Congress took a stand on saying that we are going to fund AI safety team. Um, However, in taking this stand, it seems to be, honestly, not a huge amount of money being committed to this. That they're committing up to $10 million to AI safety, which is not nothing. But on the other hand, when you think about both the cost of AI and machine learning professionals, as well as the amount of money being spent on this by many other organizations, ranging from Microsoft to OpenAI, doesn't seem like a huge amount. So, what do you make of this?
No, not at all. I mean, I think they literally mean a team of like Joe, John, and Mary. I mean, it's just that's like
Mhm.
it's a drop in the bucket. One of the reports I read that UK alone put 125 million into their team, and the EU number is much, much larger than that. It's honestly staggering. I mean, the US has always been, in my opinion, very behind on regulation and putting regulatory practices in place, particularly around anything related to technology. I'm not a
Mhm.
big fan of regulatory anyway. I do think this is the right how I don't know if you mentioned it's being housed. This team is being housed as part of NIST, which is Standards and Technology, or National Institute of Standards and Technology.
Right.
And I think it's the right place for it, because what we really need more than anything, I mean, I know all the focus is on safety because everyone's really concerned about all of those kind of things. I'm much more concerned about standards and controls and these things that really only government can do, which is
Mhm.
establishing some of these policies that yes, it's about safety and about safeguards, but it's also just about having things normalized so that we can have interoperability and all of that kind of element. I tend to be a believer in the free market, in that we'll see the market do a lot of this on its own because there is so much angst over this.
Mhm.
But I have a good friend who used to, he and I would have long debates about this, and he would say, "I believe in capitalism, but a company will light their customers on fire if they can make enough profit at it." And it's just like I think there's always that risk, and I think the biggest risk when it comes to AI is that not only do sometimes the companies themselves not understand how their own technology works because of the black box challenges, but clearly its customers do not understand. And so the risks incumbent on, or incumbent with the fact that we're exposing our personal data, and maybe don't even understand the risk we're taking on. I think the government does have an important role to play, and there's just I don't know what universe that $10 million is enough. And in fairness, they're calling it a down payment, but it's barely even a start. So I'm a little dismayed at that, but I guess something's better than nothing.
Yeah, at least they are putting a little money there. But yes, comparing this to the size of, say, OpenAI, which literally has a $10 billion commitment from Microsoft and is obviously productizing, but also spending a lot of that money on pure research. It seems like such a drop in the bucket. And I think your point about capitalism is a good one. So I have an MBA. I'm a business owner. I obviously believe in capitalism, but at the same time, uh, one of the things that I like warning people about is that when you look in biology at growth, unmanaged growth is literally the definition of a cancer. Cancer's not a healthy thing, but that's what happens when you have uncontrolled growth with no guidance and no governance. At the end of the day, that is literally the definition of a cancer. So you want to avoid that from a capitalistic perspective, because that leads to a messed up ecosystem, and there has to be some level of governance. I think it's interesting that when you look at tech founders and tech leaders, they've actually been asking for some sort of guidance or governance or legal structure to work with, if for no other reason than to work around it, such as when the internet first came out and we had Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, and at least set the rules for how social media should work. Maybe those weren't the best rules, but like they got set, and then social media platforms knew what they could and couldn't do with user content, and that led to an entire market and led to our Twitter and Facebook and TikTok and everything else being able to take off afterwards.
Yeah, I think, and this is my point. I mean, we've seen, countries, Australia, Canada, the EU have attempted to enact laws that are horribly inadequate, immediately
Mhm.
backfire. In some cases, just because the tech companies are rebelling against them, but in many cases because they're just not practical, and they speak to the complete lack of understanding within most government ranks of how this stuff actually works, and it's only going to get worse with all of this. Which is why, for me, I look at this and why I said I think NIST is the right place is what we're really looking for is a clearinghouse. We're looking, they're going to be always behind the eight ball of trying to actually truly regulate. And so,
Mhm.
you want to get some big boulders out there, some big teeth, big stakes in the ground, pick your metaphor, to have some at least some anchor points for protection. But mostly this is about creating a clearinghouse that everyone is together, everyone's on the same page, and where you can then create a bully pulpit. If someone isn't playing nice, if someone is taking advantage of customer data, whatever, that you can sort of shout it from the rooftop so the consumers hear it. And that's going to always be the safest process than trying to put a regulatory where we go find somebody, because that ends up, it's like the old story, and I forgot who it was, but it was a psychological study about this daycare center, right? And
Mhm.
where they wanted to encourage parents to pick their kids up on time. And people would show up late and they'd be really nervous about it. It's like, oh, I'm so sorry, but they were having this issue. So they instituted a penalty, a fine, that if you showed up 15 minutes late, it was like an extra $15. Well, now parents would say, that's an easy decision. 15 extra bucks to be a half hour late or whatever. I'll show up late. And it actually caused people to show up later. They got more revenue, but it caused them to show up later because it actually was now a transaction instead of this sort of societal, hey, we need to all be on the same team and you need to show up and pick your kids up because that's our social contract. And I think
Mhm.
we have the same issue here with regulation around AI. The social contract is going to be actually more important than this regulatory layer that says, if you break this rule, we're going to charge you $100 million, because for most of these companies, it's a drop in the bucket. And so, I think that there's so many challenges around this. Um, so, like I said, I'm glad there's a first step, but I wish it was a little bit of a bigger one.
Yeah, I'm actually wonder how important this will be in the long run, because when I think about the governance structures that really define uh, what companies tend to be worried about right now, there's some uh, data, there are geographic issues associated with EU law. There's things about data residency, ISO 27001. Some companies care about HIPAA on the healthcare side, or FedRAMP on the government side. And I feel like at the end of the day, kind of those governance issues tend to come up a lot more than any specific standards around data governance. Um, perhaps there's a foundational data governance standard that I'm missing that led to those governance issues. But I think that from a practical perspective, there are these commercial governance issues that are kind of filtered back to the rest of us, where we say, okay, well, HIPAA defined personally identifiable information this way, and it gave me an idea of where to start for how to actually protect that going forward. But we don't have that right now either for AI. So, I guess we got to start somewhere.
Yeah, and I think the hard part with AI is that it's not, everything you just described is fundamentally driven on this idea of I've got structured data. I can
Mhm.
identify the data, it's mine. And the problem with AI is it's none of that. And so it's
Right.
going to be exponentially harder to execute on all of this. So yeah, I think, early days, I'm not putting a whole lot of credence in it.